The other thing is I want people to know that we also love our families and love our Black community.
And as you said, have rich, full, amazing families, traditions, and so much to share.
So much.
Yeah.
So much.
Once again, we just want to say
And
thank
our families
you.
love us, period.
Please clap it up, guys, and make sure you get the book. We want to thank you so much for joining us for
Thank
Essence
you.
Authors. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Let's welcome to the stage Essence Magazine's own Melissa Noel, contributing news and politics editor. Melissa Noel, there she go. Beautiful. Absolutely stunning. And I'm just, look at Raquel. Just standing over there looking glorious, An award-winning author, activist, media strategist, transgender rights activist, former national organizer for the Transgender Law Center, and the former executive editor of Out Magazine, Raquel Willis.
Look at this outfit. Gorgeous. Come on. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for being here. Everybody, good afternoon. I just want to say thank you for taking the time out to join us here at our 30th birthday celebration.
Woo!
To bring your very first book, The Risk It Takes to Bloom. Welcome, Raquel.
Thank you. I'm excited to be back in New Orleans. I love New Orleans. I'm a Southern girl,
Yeah.
so it's perfect.
Yeah, awesome, awesome, awesome. So I want to get into this conversation. Wait, don't look scared, It's gonna be good, I promise. But the book is called The Risk It Takes to Bloom. And typically when we think about blooming and we think about coming into our own, we think about all the positive things that come along with that. But this title is really unique in that it's talking about the risk that you sometimes have to take in order to become the best version of yourself, to become who you're meant to be. So why was it so important for you to remind us of that, not only throughout the book, but of course just hitting us right with it from the title and reminding us of the risk you sometimes have to take to achieve that, to be one's full self and embrace all that comes with that?
Yeah, so I was inspired by this short poem that says, "And the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to bloom." And it really made me think about my life growing up in Augusta, Georgia. I don't know if it's anybody from Georgia.
We know we
around
got Georgia
here.
family in the
Georgia
house, that's
folks.
for sure.
But, also growing up in a very kind of traditional Southern Black family. We were
Yeah.
also Catholic, y'all. So it was
I'm a Catholic girl,
layers
too.
of expectations. And I think coming into my queerness as a young person, and then later my transness and my womanhood, there was a lot that I had to work through, right, to get to this point where I could share my truth in mixed company, right? No stigma, no shame, just be my unapologetic, unfuckwittable self. But it took work, and it took a lot of small moments of being like, I'm not gonna be bullied.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be told that my path is invalid. I'm gonna trust my family to evolve. I have a beautiful mother, sister, and brother who've evolved. And one of those other moments in the book where I had to think about moving through tragedy was losing my father.
Yeah.
And a lot of my experience was being afraid of ruining his legacy by owning my truth. And so I had to process a lot.
There's a lot to take in there. And you share that with us throughout the book quite a lot, particularly when it comes to your family. You talk about how when you first came out to your family, some were accepting, but you talked about how your dad and your brother had quite strong reactions there and how you had to work through that. And so you just mentioned how your family evolved. So talk to me a little bit about what that was like for you in navigating that, and how in the book you not only share that, not only for your journey, but in order to help other people too.
Yeah, I think we have to be real, right? Gender is a very real thing in the Black community. We don't talk enough about the pressures on Black women to be a particular way. the pressures on black men to be a particular way.
Absolutely.
And then when we think about all of the LGBTQ plus folks, it's kind of like we shouldn't exist, right? We shouldn't be there. And I think with my dad and my brother to a lesser extent, there was just a lot of expectations there, a lot of fear of not living up to their expectations of who I was supposed to be. And I think we have to unpack that in our families, right? Because when I think about gender, I actually think that as black folks, we often are beyond gender.
Okay.
Because there's a way that black men are expected to strive for masculinity that actually is really only accessible to white men, right? Because there's a lot of trappings there around you got to be the provider, right? But then we have all of these barriers economically, all of these different things. And when I think about, of course, for black women, similarly, right? There's all of these layers of expectations on who black women are supposed to be in a world really made for white women. And as a black trans woman, I want to be a window for folks to understand that you can create your own path, honey. Like, you don't have to try to be like anybody else. And actually, we're beyond that because we have a history, a rich African history, actually, of looking at gender in multifaceted ways. Not just in the ways that we've been told we're supposed to look at it in this kind of post-slavery society.
And I think it's interesting what you just shared there, right? You said you want to be a window, for people. And so when I think about a window, I think about transparency, I think about clarity. And so you share a lot of examples in the book where you're really transparent about your family experiences. In one instance, you talk about a family funeral that you attended when you were early in your transition, and how, you had to navigate that, and you had the support of your mother, but you also had to deal, with family members who weren't as understanding. Why was it so important for you to be that window throughout the book where you were creating, not only sharing with us, but creating the space to not only share your story, but maybe help others along? So tell us a little bit about that family funeral experience you share in the book, and how sharing experiences like that you hope to help other people.
Yeah, well, I just want to call out how much louder it got once we started speaking. That's transphobia, y'all. Anyway, I'm just kidding. But when I think about those stories from like extended family that I shared, I mean, I'm Southern, right? And so
Okay, we're seeing great folks in the audience.
People.
That's amazing.
But to be Southern, I come from like this rich history.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have family reunions every year. I'm like, when I say country, like my people are like pastors, teachers in like small schools and places so small that they call them by the county, So it was important to add that texture because I don't think that we often hear the kind of richness that comes with trans lives, right? We often only hear about white trans people and often very privileged white trans people, but like I'm coming with multitudes.
Yeah.
And so that was important. But to talk about that context, I mean, you can only imagine what it was like for me to show up in my truth for the first time around family. It was frightening. Like, I thought somebody was going to strike me down right there, but it actually wasn't a learning experience for a lot of folks. There was a lot of love there, a lot of warmth, and we moved through the discomfort.
Yeah.
But I think that the discomfort that I felt as someone coming home in their full trans glory, it's connected to, right, like cousins that I've had who had babies who weren't expecting to have babies, right? Or people who just had different paths, right, than the one that was kind of set
or
out
expected,
for them.
right? Those expectations,
That
like
was
you
expected.
said, right?
And what do? We grow, we evolve, we open ourselves up to learn something different, learn how to love more abundantly, and that's what my family did. And this year, I'm keynoting at the family reunion.
Come on now, family keynote. And that's important, right? Because
It's
especially
real
when you
important.
come from a traditional family And not only are the expectations there, but also just those family rituals. It's really important when you get to have that place and that space to be that voice, to be that keynote in the family, and that respect is there, that love is there. So that's a really special, special moment. Yeah.
And I think there's also this kind of way that we think about all of these terms, right? It's like to be trans, to be gay. If you find out you have a gay cousin or one of your siblings is queer or something, you're like, oh, well, where did you pick that up at, right? It must have came from somewhere else. And that often is actually not the case, right? It's actually, there's an essence that's been here that was stifled. And now that I know the language, I can help let you into this story too.
So not only are you being a window in the descriptions in the book and and sharing your family stories, but then you also help us navigate in the book relationships, career, social justice. There's so many different things that you share with us in the book. And I wanted to get into one of those things here, because I think it's really important the way that you were able to take us through not only different facets of your life, but different facets of life that we all experience. And, you know, in contrast to the relationships that had to evolve with some of your other family members, you talk a lot about your mom and your mom's support, the close relationship that you have with her. What lessons have you taken from your mother that have helped guide you in the work that you do, both personally and professionally?
Yeah, I think with my mom, she is a big dreamer, and in her like sweet Southern way, she doesn't take no for an answer. Like if she wants something, she's like, I'm gonna make it happen by hook or crook, and not really by crook, because she's like,
she's not about that life.
Basically a saint. She's as much of a saint as you could be. But I think being a big dreamer, I think if she were here, she was on book tour with me actually for a bunch of different stops. But she was always like, you know, to love your child is to allow them to grow into who they need to be, not who you think they should be.
Right.
And
or like you said, not who you like, what was like set out
to be. And I think that that's beautiful. Like there's just this feeling of grace that I've really learned from her. And I can give grace to myself.
Yeah.
I can give grace to others because of her. And I mean, she's just a bad bitch, you know? Like, even though she's never called herself a feminist, I would say she's the first feminist I knew. She had her own career, you know, in the 90s when I was growing up, she had like the big shoulder pads, you know, like
I mean, classic
big
style.
old glasses.
Yeah, the classic
like,
style.
That classic kind of like look. But she really was like a businesswoman and very invested in education.
Yeah.
And so it's so sweet because I don't consider myself an educator per se, but she's like, you educating your own way, baby.
But no,
like,
you educate so many of us just by not only living your truth, but being that window, being transparent, sharing your journey, sharing your story, and also just being a voice for many others who are learning how to use theirs. And so that is, you are educating us and you are teaching us. And I just want to say thank you for teaching us. Thank you for educating us. And thank you for being a voice for so many who may not yet know what to say.
Yeah, I know it's a lot of people who don't know what to say, right? I think, let's be clear, you know, even as glorious as Essence Fest is, and I have pranced through this hall a couple of times, right? I still know that as a Black trans woman, this space wasn't necessarily made for me initially, right?
Understood.
But I do think that this is a place that has evolved, right? Yeah. Just like the people in my life have evolved, just like I've evolved, just like our society is evolving. And this moment right here, being in conversation with you, is just a notch in that moment of evolution.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think what's so key and so what's really important about that is you give folks the space to evolve. You know, like, you know, people may be in a space where they may not have been educated about certain things, or they just may not have known at that point in time. But once you're able to learn and to know, once you know better, you do better. And so just holding space for folks to evolve, I think is really important. So just thank you for also sharing that not only has your family evolved, but that you've given them the space to do so. Yeah, I think that's great. I want to know really quickly if anyone in our audience has any questions that they may want to ask. I want to give you the opportunity to ask them before I continue on. Any questions? Any questions? Anybody? Come on up. Come on up. We want to make sure you get to use the mic. We can hear you.
Hello. Hi there. It is lovely to meet you both, as both just a fan of both of your work and also a media person. Mask off real quick. I wanted to ask you, Raquel, as someone, a black woman who's worked in both queer media and black media explicitly on purpose, because they are both a part of my identity that I hold very dear, I'm curious what you think are the biggest areas of gap bridging in the way we cover people who occupy multiple intersections and might not at times fit into the primary brand of either at one time or another.
Yeah.
What a great question. Thank you so much.
A big question. Well, when I think about media, and particularly media for the black community, I think that we're often facing a lot of threats, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we already know, like, mainstream media often doesn't fully tell our stories.
Right.
But also, even within this kind of black media ecosystem, it's a lot of trash out there, y'all. Like, just to be clear, some of these Instagram accounts, some of these platforms stoke, I think, some of the worst instincts in us. They
Right,
pit us
there's a
against
lot
each
of
other.
misinformation and disinformation that goes on, and it's really, really key to really be paying attention to reputable, credible sources for sure.
And that's
but
the
it's
thing.
hard.
And I think most people don't have the tools, right? Like, we have the tools because we're journalists. And so we've gone to school, we studied
Right.
narrative and looking at critical sources. But most people, are consuming their news from social media headlines, from accounts that say the worst things about black women, say the worst things about black LGBTQ plus folks, and often pit us against each other. So I think we have to, like, hold those moments accountable. We have to let our people know, actually, maybe don't consume that, or maybe don't share that, because I know you, and I know you love our people more than that.
Right, like be
So
discerning.
Be discerning. So that's important. I think also, like, using our platforms to tell whatever stories we want to tell, right? Whatever lane you're in, people need to hear your unique perspective, whether you're in tech, you're in beauty, you're in the family space, all of these different things. Like, social media gives us a chance to kind of democratize
Absolutely.
our power in that way. So I think those things are important. And I think in what is difficult in black media, and also what I've experienced in queer media, is that oftentimes we don't get all of the resources that we deserve to do the beautiful work that we
deserve to do.
That we deserve to do for our people who are so deserving of that.
Right.
I know in queer media, it's a revolving door, because people will say they want to be a part of certain initiatives one year, and then the next year, apparently the budget just dried up, right? So I think demanding long-term investment in black media and in queer media, in women's media, is so important.
Yeah, and to your point there, right? You said demanding long-term investment. So what would you say are some ways that we can do a better job at that, right? What are some better ways in terms of collaboration that we can ensure that that long-term investment is happening more frequently? And to the point that was made there in the question, which is to continue to fill in that gap. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's about, one thing, first of all, the audience here, y'all should give yourselves a round of applause, because y'all
truly
are supporting a legacy black publication that we trust, Essence, by attending this event. So it's like finding those outlets and those sources, those people, those journalists,
Absolutely.
those voices you love
Right.
that give you life. and being long-term invested in them, subscribing, all of that stuff. And then I think it's about being supportive also of local media, right? Because Essence and bigger brands can only cover certain things, but
Right.
one of the biggest problems is that local media doesn't often get the love that it deserves
Right.
too.
Doesn't have the resources to do,
Doesn't
like you said,
have
the
the
kind of
resources.
beautiful and in-depth coverage that our people deserve, right?
Yeah, and whenever you can, demand these social media platforms actually
Do better.
take care of folks,
Yeah.
right? And don't allow bigotry. So I think those are some things that come
Yeah.
up for me.
And I think those are key, and they may
And
sound.
if you care about what we've been talking about,
Uh-huh.
particularly like Black LGBTQ stories, Black trans stories, support those creators too,
Right.
because there's even another layer of marginalization there where the funding doesn't always go as far as it should.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think, to your credit, those are, they may seem small, but those are really great, tangible ways that have big impact, and things that we can do. And so to bring it back to the book a little bit, because we want to make sure that folks know how they can get it, where they can get the book. So tell us a little bit about where the book is available, and then I'm going to get into the next question about the book.
Yeah, I mean, you can get the book today. I'll be signing them. And then you can get them online and like wherever you get.
Yeah, wherever books are sold. But you're here today.
You're here today, so get it today.
I mean, the time, no time like the present. You have Raquel here to actually sign the book, to chat a little bit with you about it. And I want to turn a little bit to your social justice work, your activism. One of the pivotal moments in your career was the speech you made at the 2017 Women's March, where you stood amongst other major big names. And however, as it relates to your book, your microphone was cut off when organizers felt like, you've run out of time, they needed to move on. But now that you look back on that moment, right?
I love how you just summarized that. It's time to move on.
They were like, it was time to move on, but no, like your voice needed to be heard. So now that you look back on that moment, we're in this space now, you have this book where not only are you get to talk about that moment, but so many others in order to share with this audience and so many Americans. Not only what did you learn from that moment and the priorities that you have in terms of being that window for others?
Yeah, so I mean, 2017, the Women's March was the day after Trump was elected. So it was a huge moment, politically. There was a lot of discussion around feminism and women's rights, but let's be clear, it was a particular type of woman that was in the imagination. It was a white woman, a straight woman, cis woman, probably a privileged woman, all of those different things in terms of class. And so when my microphone was cut, I felt small. I felt like I had taken a chance on trusting this space to respect me, even though I think in the back of my mind I was like, I don't know if that's gonna happen here. And then this moment happened, and I think what I learned in that moment was I never wanted to be reliant fully on another person or another platform to share my story.
Ooh. Yeah,
Right,
can we clap it up for that, please? Please. You never wanted to be reliant on another entity or another person to share your story.
Yeah.
I think that's really powerful. I think we just sit in that just for a little second, real quick, because that has so much power. And to your point, which you made it a little while ago, which is the way we can fill in the gap is by ensuring that we're supporting those people, those entities, and folks like you who are literally standing in the gap, who are literally using their voices. And that's sharing, that's coming out to things like this, that is supporting by buying the books, right? And also to sharing the reliable and quality messages that you're putting out there of equality and so much more.
But honestly, when I started my career in 2013, I graduated from the University of Georgia. There wasn't really a landscape to be open as a Black trans woman and to embark on a career in journalism.
In journalism.
Like, who was doing that?
You're just over here trailblazing. But you were just doing what you needed to do.
That in the moment, right?
Not in the moment, because you're doing what you need to do. You are literally like, these are things that I want and I deserve.
Yeah.
And I'm coming for what's mine, really.
Yeah, but I hadn't gotten there yet.
Right.
Because I felt like to have a career, I had to be in the closet. I could not be out as queer or out as trans or anything.
So how did you navigate that?
Yeah.
How were you able to overcome those feelings and, I guess you said, become your full true self, right?
Yeah.
How did you move past the risk that it took for you to bloom to be your full self?
Well, I was inspired. I think that we all have these moments, especially when we think about like Black Lives Matter, the movement for Black lives. Like, there are a lot of folks whose deaths really galvanize people
Absolutely.
to think about their lives and their work differently. Trayvon, right? Mike Brown, Sandra Bland, Breonna Taylor,
Philando
obviously
Castile,
George
right? Floyd.
So many folks. For me, I was carrying all of those people, but it actually was a young trans girl who died by suicide. And she left a letter to publish online, and she was like, she couldn't see a future for herself. This was 2014. And basically she said, fix society, please. And as someone in media, as a journalist who was not out, because I was afraid of, what might happen to my career, that really inspired me to be more outspoken and to stand in the gap.
Yeah.
And so my work became about leaving the door open wider for the next generation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, honey, if you don't know, I mean, I'm joking kind of, but not really. The agenda is working. Queer and trans people are not afraid in the ways that we used to be. And especially Gen Z is more gay and lesbian and bi and trans than I even thought they was going to be.
They are certainly living their truths. They are teaching so many of us, like, how to just be and exist in the full ways that you deserve.
And the thing is that I think what often happens in our community is people try to pretend like we don't exist. They try to pretend like gay and queer and trans people haven't always been here. We always been here. You just don't have the luxury to silence us anymore.
Right.
So figure out what your insecurity is and work through it. Because it's really not about me.
Right.
It's about how you feel about your masculinity or your femininity. That ain't got nothing to do with me, honey. Because I'm going to live my life regardless.
Right. Listen, and I think the big thing there is, right, everyone, no matter what it is you want for yourself or for your life, you should have that freedom to be able to choose that and live, as we're talking about, your full self, your full life, and all the benefits that come with that.
Yeah, and I mean, I actually think instead of moving from fear and ignorance, move from a place of curiosity and openness. Because what I hope I can do in my work, and I know a lot of the LGBTQ plus people that I know feel, is that actually we want cisgender and straight people to relax their backs and like chill too, right? Like come be
Just
in
come
the garden
be.
of liberation with
Right.
us. Because I think about the boys and the men who we tell they can't cry, they can't have certain emotions, they can't experience love and softness and be precious.
In certain ways, right.
That's a gender problem. When I think about women, especially black women who are told they can't be those things either, but also you got to be subservient in this way, and your destiny,
you got to be strong in the other way.
and you got to be
gotta,
strong, right?
Like,
you
which
got to
one
be
is
superwoman on the other side. It's too much. Those are gender problems. So I think there's an opportunity if you listen, if you love more, if you expand yourself, to do something different, to not be held back by the trauma that maybe your parents left in your lap in some way, right? Like I'm working through the trauma my parents in some way left in my lap.
And it's a continuing journey, right?
Yeah, and they're working through it too.
So the last question here to wrap up is, you have spent over a decade covering our stories in so many ways. And we thank you so much for your work. And now with this book, your first book, you get to share
Come
your
on,
own.
first.
Come on, first. Okay, but it won't be the last, though. We know that. We look forward to having you back on this stage for the next one. What is it that you share so much with us in the book? You take us through your personal journey. You share your career journey. You give us advice. You make us laugh. You make us cry. You hold us accountable as well. What is it that you hope that people take away from this journey?
A couple of things. I think the first thing is that Black trans people are main characters too. That we're not like random NPCs somewhere, you know, just existing while everyone else's life happens. We learn, go to school, we work and have careers and navigate bullshit in the workplace just like everybody else. And that we also love and have relationships and have breakups and deal with ain't shit people and deal with somebody who was cool for 5 minutes. You know, like there's a full life happening here beyond a Dave Chappelle joke or just hilarious skit or like whatever. And not to call them out, but to also call them out. You know, like that's often all that anyone knows about our lives. And that's a problem.
Right. And you get to show with this book, and what I enjoyed so much is we see the fullness, as you said, the layers of your life, and also how you've been able to be a window for so many others. So audience, I just want us to just...
Well, one more thing.
Sure.